AITA for telling my pregnant friend, who already has 2 kids and plans to pay a nanny just $200 a week for full-time childcare plus housework, that maybe she shouldn't have more kids if she can't afford them. I, 25F, am the one telling the story, and one of my closest friends, 28F, is at the center of it. She already has 2 kids under 10, and she's currently pregnant with her 3rd. It started as an ordinary evening with friends. There were 6 of us at the table, laughing, trading stories, and sharing food. We were the kind of group that could turn any random Tuesday into something that felt like a Friday night. We were talking about everyday things, jobs, streaming shows, the kind of small talk that stitches a night together. Then the topic drifted to childcare. It seemed harmless. It seemed casual, but it was the spark that lit everything else on fire. She leaned forward, smiling, and announced that once the baby arrived, she was planning to hire a full-time nanny. She sounded excited, like she had already been picturing the help she would have and the relief it would bring. Then she started listing her requirements. The nanny should have a college degree. The nanny should be certified in CPR and first aid. The nanny should handle all 3 kids, her 2 under 10 and the newborn on the way. On top of that, the nanny should also do dishes, laundry, light cleaning, even run errands like grocery shopping or picking up dry cleaning. It was clear she wasn't just describing a babysitter. She was describing a nanny and household manager rolled into one. I listened, nodding politely, until a question popped into my head. How much did she plan to pay? When she answered, I thought she was joking. $200 a week. I repeated it back to her, certain I had misheard. $200 a week? For 10 hours a day, Monday through Friday, plus some weekends. She said yes, without hesitation, like it was obvious. The words slipped out of me before I could stop them. You're literally wanting to pay someone with a college degree $200 a week? Do you not see how messed up that is? That was the moment the energy shifted. The laughter at the table died. She explained that daycare was too expensive, that she and her husband couldn't afford more, and that this was their only option. She admitted she was already struggling with her 2 kids and knew adding a 3rd would make it harder. My friends looked between us. Some raised their eyebrows. Others glanced down at their drinks. And me? I felt caught between sympathy for her exhaustion and disbelief at her logic. I know it was blunt. I know it was raw. But sometimes a sentence comes out of you before you polish it. Sometimes the truth stumbles out, unfiltered. And this time, my words would trigger a storm I couldn't pull back. So here's the question I'm still asking myself. Was I wrong for saying maybe she shouldn't have kids she can't afford? Or was I right, just too harsh in how I said it? The moment I said those words, maybe you shouldn't have kids you can't afford, it was like dropping a glass on the floor. The room went silent, and all the laughter from earlier evaporated. My friend's face froze, her eyes wide. Then she blinked quickly, and I could see the hurt rising before she even spoke. That's really insensitive, she said, her voice tight. I can't believe you would say that to me. Her reaction snapped me out of my frustration for a moment. I hadn't meant to wound her like that. My words had been blunt, maybe too blunt, but they came from a place of concern, not cruelty. Still, in that instant, it didn't matter what my intentions were. The damage was done. She leaned forward, defensive now. You don't understand. Women should be able to enjoy sex freely without having to constantly worry about preventing pregnancy. It's not fair that I should have to be the one taking all the precautions. That part threw me, because this wasn't about sexual freedom or morality to me. It was about finances and practicality. I tried to explain, I wasn't judging your choices in that way. I was just saying that it doesn't seem fair to expect someone else to practically raise your kids for pennies. She shook her head, clearly not convinced. The other friends at the table shifted uncomfortably. One muttered, "That was harsh," under their breath. Another nodded slightly at me, as if to say, "I get where you're coming from." The group was split. I tried to soften it. Look, I know it came out wrong. What I meant was, if daycare is too expensive and paying someone fairly is also too expensive, then it feels like you're putting yourself and your kids in a really tough spot. But she wasn't hearing me anymore. She was stuck on the phrase itself. Maybe you shouldn't have kids. To her, it sounded like I was attacking her identity as a mother. To me, it was pointing out a financial reality she refused to acknowledge. The incident kept spiraling. She repeated that she had no other options. That daycare was a scam. That the healthcare system was broken. That birth control options had failed her in the past. Every solution I brought up, like her husband considering a vasectomy, was dismissed with reasons why it wouldn't work. I said, well, then maybe just don't have sex. She fired back instantly. I shouldn't have to put my sex life on hold. That's not fair. And I agreed, in theory. It isn't fair that women bear the brunt of family planning. But fairness doesn't erase reality. And reality was staring us all in the face. She was about to have 3 kids and couldn't afford childcare, yet expected a nanny to work full-time for poverty wages. That's when the frustration boiled over inside me, and the words slipped out the way they did. It wasn't premeditated. It wasn't designed to cut deep. It was the only thing left to say in a conversation where every other point was being brushed aside. Maybe you shouldn't have kids you can't afford. That was the spark. That was the inciting incident. And once it was out, there was no way to pull it back. After my comment, the whole conversation became a battlefield. She crossed her arms, visibly upset, and said again, "That's a terrible thing to say to a pregnant woman." Her voice cracked a little, and for a second, I felt a wave of guilt. But then she doubled down. "You're acting like I did something wrong by getting pregnant," she continued. "That's not fair. Everyone deserves to have kids if they want them. Money shouldn't stop someone from having a family." That sentence set off something in me, because while I understood the sentiment, I also knew that money does matter. Raising kids isn't free. Food, clothes, healthcare, school, everything costs something. I couldn't wrap my head around how she could acknowledge struggling and yet expect others to bridge the gap for her. I try to stay calm. I'm not saying you don't deserve to have kids. I'm saying it's unfair to hire someone, demand qualifications like a degree and certifications, ask them to raise your kids and run your house, and then pay them less than minimum wage. She fired back. "Well, what am I supposed to do? Daycare is too expensive. We can't afford it. A nanny is my only option." One of our friends chimed in gently, "But you're not really giving them a livable wage either. That doesn't solve anything." She waved it off. "The kind of person who takes this job won't need that much money. Probably a college student or someone who lives at home." That was when the frustration started boiling again. "Even college students deserve to be paid fairly," I said. "Living with your parents doesn't make your time worth less." Her face flushed, and I could feel the group around us holding their breath. Another friend whispered, "She's got a point," but it was drowned out by my friend's growing defensiveness. "I can't believe you'd shame me like this," she said. "You think I should stop having sex, stop having kids, and just live like a robot? Do you know how depressing that sounds?" The tension was rising with every word, and I realized something important. This wasn't just about childcare anymore. It wasn't about money or wages. It was about her feeling judged as a person, as a woman, and as a mother. But for me, it still came back to reality. The math didn't change. The finances didn't magically work out. And no matter how unfair the world is about family planning, it didn't make underpaying a nanny ethical or sustainable. That's what fueled the tension between us. She wanted understanding without accountability. I wanted accountability without cruelty. But the way it came out of me felt cruel anyway. And the more we argued, the more the group split. Some friends nodded along with me, whispering about how $200 a week was basically exploitation. Others shot me sharp looks, like I had crossed an unforgivable line by suggesting she shouldn't have more children. The air was heavy. No one was laughing anymore. Drinks sat untouched, and I realized that one sentence had shifted not just the mood of the night, but maybe the entire direction of our friendship. The argument hit its peak when she slammed her hand on the table. Not hard enough to draw stares from other people in the restaurant, but hard enough to make our little group flinch. "You don't get it," she snapped. "You don't have kids. You don't know what it's like. You have no idea what I go through every single day." She wasn't wrong. I don't have kids. I don't wake up 3 times a night to crying or juggle school schedules or worry about pediatric appointments. I could see her exhaustion in the way her shoulders slumped and the dark circles under her eyes. But none of that erased the problem at hand. She wanted someone else to carry her load without paying them fairly. I tried to breathe before speaking, but the words came out sharper than I intended. "No, I don't have kids, but I know what it means to respect someone's work. And what you're offering isn't respect, it's exploitation." Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, I wondered if I'd gone too far. The others at the table were caught between us, some whispering that I had a point, others shaking their heads like I had crossed a line you're not supposed to cross with a pregnant woman. She said, almost whispering, "So you think I shouldn't even be a mom? That's what you're saying?" That question cut me too, because I didn't think she was a bad mom. In fact, I thought she loved her kids fiercely. She was always posting about them, always planning things for them. What I was questioning was her approach to responsibility, not her love. But in her mind, my words had collapsed into an attack on her entire identity. I said, "No, that's not what I mean. What I'm saying is, if you admit you can't afford childcare, and you admit you can't afford to raise another child comfortably, then maybe adding another isn't the best idea. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human. It makes you someone living in reality." But she wasn't listening anymore. She was crying now, saying through clenched teeth, "You're supposed to be my friend. And instead of supporting me, you're tearing me down." That was the climax, the boiling point, the place where I realized no matter how carefully I tried to explain, the words had already done their damage. I sat there, torn between guilt and frustration. Guilt because I'd clearly hurt her feelings. Frustration because I couldn't pretend her plan made sense. And under it all, a sinking awareness. Our friendship might not look the same after this night, after the blow-up. The table fell into an awkward quiet. People stirred their drinks. One of our friends muttered something about the bathroom and didn't come back for 15 minutes. The tension was thick enough to choke on. I stared down at my hands, thinking about what had just happened. I could double down, keep arguing, and maybe push her even further away. Or I could step back, let it go, and risk leaving the entire issue unresolved. Neither option felt good. Finally, I spoke in a quieter voice. Look, I know I was blunt, too blunt, and I'm sorry for how I said it. I didn't mean to attack you personally. What I meant was, I care about you. I care about your kids. And I don't want to see you in a situation where you're relying on someone else's underpaid labor to make things work. That's not fair to them. And honestly, it's not fair to you either because it sets you up for more stress and disappointment. She didn't look at me at first. She kept her eyes on the table, wiping at her cheeks. Another friend tried to smooth things over, saying, maybe both of you have a point. Childcare is expensive, but it's also true that $200 a week is way too low. There has to be some middle ground. That gave me an opening. That's all I'm trying to say. I added, it's not about judging you for having kids. It's about facing reality. If daycare is too expensive and a fair nanny is too expensive, then maybe the solution isn't to find someone desperate enough to accept low pay. Maybe the solution is rethinking the bigger picture. She finally looked up, her expression still wounded, but less fiery. You make it sound so simple, but it's not. I didn't plan this pregnancy, and I can't just undo it. So what am I supposed to do now? That was the turning point, because in that moment, I realized we weren't really arguing about Nanny anymore. We were arguing about the feeling of being trapped, about choices that had already been made, about the gap between what she wanted and what she could realistically have. I softened my voice even more. You're right. It's not simple, and I'm not pretending to have all the answers. I don't want to see you burn out or feel like you're failing because you try to solve an impossible problem with an unfair solution. That's all I was trying to say. She nodded slowly, still guarded, but I could see the anger cooling into something else. Resignation, maybe, or just exhaustion. The rest of the night moved on in fragments. Small talk, half-hearted jokes, but the crack between us remained. The turning point wasn't a fix. It wasn't forgiveness. It was simply a shift, from shouting to silence, from heat to something cooler. But whether that shift would heal or harden, I didn't know yet. In the days after that night, the weight of what I said followed me around like a shadow. I replayed the conversation over and over in my head. Her listing out the nanny's impossible job description, me asking about pay, her saying $200, and then my blunt reaction. I kept hearing my own voice echoing. Maybe you shouldn't have kids you can't afford. On the one hand, I knew why I said it. It wasn't out of cruelty. It was out of frustration at seeing someone I cared about blind herself to reality. On the other hand, I couldn't deny that my delivery was harsh. Words can be true and still cut like a knife. She didn't text me for a few days. When she finally did, it was short. I'm still upset. I need space. That stung. I wanted to explain myself better, but I also knew pushing would only make things worse. Meanwhile, our mutual friends kept weighing in. One messaged me privately and said, honestly, you were right. She can't expect someone to work like that for $200. Another told me I should have held back, that you never say something like that to a pregnant woman. Their mixed responses only mirrored my own inner conflict. I sat down one night and tried to put it all in perspective. My friend isn't a bad person. She loves her kids, she works hard, and she's exhausted. But love and exhaustion don't change math. Bills still arrive. Wages still matter. Children still need more than good intentions. I realized my resolution wasn't about winning the argument. It wasn't about proving I was right. It was about deciding what kind of friend I wanted to be moving forward. Did I want to be the friend who bites her tongue, nods along, and lets someone spiral deeper into unsustainable choices? Or did I want to be the friend who tells the uncomfortable truth, even if it risks the friendship? I think in that moment, I chose the second option. Because silence might have kept the peace, but it would have left me complicit in something I believed was deeply unfair to her kids, to the nanny she wanted to underpay, and even to herself. So my resolution is this. I stand by what I said, but I wish I had said it with more compassion. I don't regret pointing out the reality, but I regret letting my frustration sharpen it into something that sounded like an attack. Whether or not our friendship recovers, I don't know. But I do know this. Sometimes caring about someone means risking their anger to remind them of reality. AITA for blurting out what I did? Or was I right to call out the financial reality, even if my delivery was brutal? Should friends sugarcoat the truth to protect each other's feelings? Or should we risk hurting them in the moment to make sure they see what's really happening? Because here's the bigger picture. Parenting is hard, yes, but childcare is a real job. People deserve fair pay, and kids deserve stability. Pretending otherwise doesn't make life easier. It just pushes the burden onto someone else. So what do you think? Was I wrong for saying it? Or was I just the only one willing to say the quiet part out loud?